Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Should You Play, where I'm going to show you some spoiler-free gameplay and give you my thoughts after playing new games for a few hours, as well as highlighting and checking out at least one of the PlayStation Plus games for each month. In this video I'm playing one of the August 2024 PlayStation Plus games, Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach, the 9th main installment in the survival horror Five Nights at Freddy's series, where you play as a kid named Gregory who, for some reason, starts off stashed inside of Freddy's body at the Pizzaplex, and must find a way to survive the other animatronics until morning when he can escape.
Who are you?
I'm Gregory.
I've never been the biggest fan of survival horror games, if I'm being honest. And before this, I've never actually played any of the games in the Five Nights at Freddy's series either.
I do not know how I got here.
I've played and enjoyed games like Amnesia, Outlast, and Soma, but I've always felt that a lot of the games in this genre relied more on cheap jump scares rather than trying to craft a scary atmosphere, good story, or a menacing opposing force. Now, Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach doesn't necessarily break the survival horror mold here, but it does some stuff great, and it does some stuff poorly, so let's just get into it.
Let us go.
First off, anyone who's played a survival horror game before knows that the gameplay is fairly straightforward. In most games in the genre, you're going from point A to point B while trying to avoid being caught. And in Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach, you'll be avoiding animatronics, security robots, and other creepy entities in order to survive until morning, using your surroundings as well as a security camera network to help you do just that.
It's like the whole place is trying to get me.
What's interesting as well about this installment is that Freddy is actually an ally from the second the game starts. So when he's not letting you hide inside of his body to avoid all detection, he'll be giving you advice and directions to keep you alive.
You can always call me on your fast watch, as long as I have power, and I am able to reach you.
When you're on your own though, you're able to hide inside of certain objects, but I felt that hiding was a little inconsistent as there were times where I hid mid-chase and they gave up immediately, but then there were other times where I hid right in front of them in the same way and they'd rip me out of my hiding spot without hesitation. So let's talk about the things I liked here, and the items at the top of my list are the atmosphere and design. Roxy, Monty, and Glamrock might not be as creepy as creatures from games like Amnesia at face value, but when you look at the other enemies like Sun, Moon, and Vanny, they're objectively really well designed and move really menacingly when they're hunting you. When I first met Sun and Moon in the daycare area, I immediately fell in love with their design and knew I wanted to see more of them later on. On top of that, most of the environments and areas are really well designed as well, even if some of them were a little confusing to navigate around, despite the rooms being fully lit up. Another thing that I love that they did here was create a free DLC expansion called Ruin, which takes place after the events of the main game and follows Gregory's best friend Cassie, easily adding another 4 or 5 hours to your experience. One other small thing I'll add on too is that 99% of the time, the haptic feedback in the PlayStation 5 controller was great. If an animatronic is near you, you're able to tell how close they are from the vibrations alone. And you can even tell if they're getting closer to you or if they're walking away, which is especially helpful when you're hiding and can't see them on the security cameras. On to the things I didn't like, the biggest issue on my list by far is the navigation.
Now what am I supposed to do?
Because it's a free roam survival horror game, you're not only going from point A to point B, but you're also often going from point A to point B and then back to point A again. And because save points are so scarce and the directions aren't always super clear, even if you're using the map, it can make having to replay levels really tedious, especially if you have to watch cutscenes over and over again. On that note, you are able to skip cutscenes by holding down the square button if you're having to replay areas, but like with interacting with other objects, or even just saving your game, you need to hold it down for far longer than I think necessary. And this is more of a minor note, but the texturing is wildly inconsistent as well. Most noticeably in the first room you see in the game, where most of the items laying around look uniform with what you'd expect to see throughout the game, but then you'd have items like this microphone that look like they're forever waiting for their textures to pop, and this seemed to be the case in most of the areas I saw in my playthrough. As far as bugs go, I've heard that the game was incredibly buggy when it first released, and that most of the issues have been resolved since, but I encountered quite a few, specifically in the daycare section with Sun and Moon for some reason. I got stuck in this area for about an hour longer than I should have because of a series of annoyingly consistent bugs, even after closing the game and booting it back up. There was one instance where Moon caught me but couldn't reach me, so I was stuck until it was able to figure out how to move again.
Children must be punished.
One instance where it teleported away completely. One instance where it teleported to my location and instantly caught me. And more than a few instances where Moon got caught on an invisible wall right where I needed to go next. I also had one issue where I was hiding from Roxy, and she refused to move away from my hiding spot, so I just had to accept my fate at that point. Beyond that, I didn't have any real technical issues, though I will note that I was able to walk through a solid door in the Ruin DLC as well. With that being said, Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach didn't end up being my favorite PlayStation Plus game, but honestly, I'm not really jumping at the opportunity to play most survival horror games anyways, so maybe I'm just not the target audience for this one.
Hey, are you having fun yet? Are ya?
But it's still clear that a good amount of love and ambition went into this, so if you're a fan of the Five Nights at Freddy's series already, you'll probably enjoy this game despite the issues I encountered, and maybe you won't encounter any of them at all in your playthrough.
Rule breaker, rule breaker. Banned from the daycare!
As always though, this is just my opinion. If you're still searching for a way out of the Pizzaplex, or if you've already finished the game and the Ruin DLC, let me know in the comments what you thought of Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for visiting, and we hope you enjoyed the show.
Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.
You can't hide forever. Give up. You can't win.